what other ways you can increase the probability of a definite response, of the desired response from a model.
Sure, yes, but basically that example I was talking with you previously, it was
Mm-hmm.
one of the examples. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
well, obviously first the simplest thing by appropriate prompting. I mean
Mm-hmm.
simplest. It's like basically in one of my last application it was hardest thing, but it's like easiest in terms of how to say it, in terms of architecture maybe, because you to change it you need to just change the prompt, change that text inside, and basically that all. You don't need to like do all the other architecture programming stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, to write appropriate prompt that will that make model to think good about problem, that will make it to find some better decisions, some outputted better way, will is very important basically in that field. But not only, we can also talk about um, for example dividing our complicated tasks for few small different tasks. I mean for few small tasks to make that model how to say it, basically models, basically it's good practice to make models do less things at once. So the less things
Mm-hmm.
model is doing, the easier you can understand what it's doing, and the less probability that it will do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, in one of my projects, I will tell you later. There's like there's case when I just divided complicated process in few smaller steps, where the different agents doing like smaller points of it, and it works much better than if I will just do it all the task from the beginning to one single model and task that to do it. Yes, so
Yeah, I also noticed that many times dealing with the ChatGPT that whenever I try to stack many different tasks into one prompt, it like yeah the quality decreases, and on the other hand, when
totally.
I give just one clear instruction, it goes the right way. So yeah, totally, I could feel that. Okay, but also, could you tell more about this prompt search process? Like, is it more already scientific, if I may say so? Meaning that you know how it works inside, and you structure your prompts in a certain known way, or is it more like a trial and error still? So this is like a black box that doing something, and from its output only you can guess how you can alter your input in order to receive the desired outcome.
Sure, there's no one that knows what's doing inside basically, so there's no science on it. There's some scientific theories about it. There's some good practices how to do it, but mostly all the time you need to experiment with this. You need to check out different techniques, like for example use chain of thought technique, my very lovely technique when you asking model to think first about what it's going to do before it actually will do it, which allows us to basically first increase quality of the model responses and also increase our understanding, how does model understands the problem and where it goes wrong, for example.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
sure, so like I mean, and yes, you basically need to experiment, try that. You can, for example, use another GPT-4 to ask him to improve your prompt, for example, or work with it together to create some prompt. There are
mm-hmm,
also some
mm-hmm.
advanced tools, like for example Langsmith, that allows you to prepare some data set and check model performance, changes of model performance on some early prepared data set. inside it. So yes, there's a bunch of ways to do it.
And could you elaborate on this chain of thought techniques, the chain of thoughts technique?
Yes,
Uh,
chain of thought.
can you give an example?
For example, in the Tinder GPT project, one of my project I'm working on currently, the basically application that rides on the dating apps with with your matches and totally doing all that writing job for you and making the dates. And basically, normally we're not asking it to write message for me. No, first of all, we're asking it to, based on that data you get on input, think first about what about you will write message, and after you creating some thoughts about it, just after it, we writing actually that message. So because of it, our messages are more like, um, let's say, more concrete, more follow the rules that it have its own context, not some just random stuff. So yes, it's a lot of instructions in the prompt, and very often model could just forgot about some of them, and that way it helps model to not forget, or at least to forget less.
So you mean that you ask it to describe how it's gonna accomplish the task, and now you get like you shed some light on its thinking process, and you have an opportunity to alter it at the first place, and then you also make model to actually follow it without skipping the steps.
Uh, Not sure if I understand you good, but like not alter it, but just making model think about what it's doing. Basically, it's interesting thing because that was famous book of that of Daniel Kahneman. I think Daniel of Kahneman. Yes, thinking fast and slow. That called in English.
Ah, that
Uh,
one. Okay, sure. Yeah.
by Kahneman. And basically, they was described some psychological processes about that, uh, like first way of thinking and second way of thinking. Where that first way of thinking was the fast thinking, when we just not thinking basically about uh, what about the process, just doing some first thing, and
Acting
our
automatically, yeah.
yes, acting automatically
On our
based on our
patterns, yeah.
yes, on our patterns, exactly. And in that second process, we actually thinking about what we're doing, and when we thinking, basically we mostly doing some other decision than in first process, and most basically it's better decisions. So with LLMs, it's basically the same. Uh, Basically, LLMs created to predict words, and that's basically that first way of thinking. Basically, they just predicting something on their patterns, but if we ask them to think about it first, to describe what they understand from their context and how it's better to behave in such situation, they will think about it and after that generate their output, so it basically looks more like that second process.
This is so insightful for me, to be honest. We're almost talking about like self consciousness in machines because this is artificial intelligence here trying to analyze its actions. It's just insane to me. Like, yeah, I never thought that this can be applied, these terms, fast and slow thinking, can be applied to an algorithm because it's very counterintuitive to me right now, but very
It's
insightful.
the way the machine thinking, like LLMs, I mean, and the way of people thinking, it's very like similar, not similar, but I'm very often much seeing some common patterns, common things in thinking by people and thinking by machines, and that was just one of the examples. How for example, machines also can lose their attention and forgot about some play pieces of context. It's we
You're so
blaming them
right.
for
Yeah.
yes, but humans doing the same. So
Yeah, sometimes I notice that when I'm talking with ChatGPT, I almost fall into the mode when I'm trying to train my employees or my mentees on how to think better and not to forget some context because they, out of lack of experience, they keep um, staying on the surface, and the this AI model does the same basically, and it scares me now because I was never scared before about the machines upheaval, that they're going to take over the world, but now as you showed me the most human thing up to date, probably it does. I'm starting to be afraid of it. So we already talked about one of these, but like as users, most of us interacted with AI at some point over past years. But from a developer point of view, what are other misconceptions users may have about AI and how to deal with it, how to work with it?
you mean like such users of ChatGPT, like
Yeah, people who are trying to not implement it into their technology, but use it on a daily basis. They misunderstand something deeply, and you want to like open their eyes to it.
okay, so basically, I think the main one of the main misunderstanding is using ChatGPT like Google to check some informations, and basically, language model is not for that. It's not for checking informations. You need some actual source of informations to be able to check it. The language model is just to process some words, to generate text, to process the informations, but we can't totally rely on that, on some knowledge that get into that into that model. So if we have some, for example, applications like Perplexity, very known, where our large language model is connected basically to internet and can check internet like a source, and only on the base of the check and source it generate responses. Yes, that's good idea to use such tool, but like not use just normal GPT as base of, as source of knowledge about some words events or something like that.
But many people now use, this last update of ChatGPT where you have many GPTs trained to do specific tasks, and one of them, very popular one, is a tutor on any subject. So what do you think about that? Can it misguide a user terribly this way, or is it safe to use it?
It depends what task we are talking about. If there's some just common knowledge about math or some programming stuff that basically not going to change and it's like very stable for a long time, it's okay to use that. Like assuming that they train that model good properly. Yes, but if we want to ask it about some new technologies or some like new framework that just arriving, so it will just have no knowledge about it. So very often we need just to give that context to model. For example, apply some documentation using some, for example, databases, vector databases, RAG systems. To that model, we'll be able to check it out. And yes, so yes, that model, that knowledge restriction is one of the points. Mm, what else? Well, basically, also I think using AI without like with total trust for all that it talking without even checking what it outputted is also wrong. Basically, because mostly GPT produces very convincing responses, but it's not always should be true. So yes, even it when it looking like it output something clever, it shouldn't in real be such clever. So yes, so it's basically need to be checked. Hmm.
Yeah.
So
It's
yes,
it's very confident in making up information that you want. Like it's gonna give you whatever you want, even if it doesn't exist. And
totally.
yeah, for sure. But also, this is like a problem of many of us to search for a strong figure whenever we are lost and like not confident about some new aspect of knowledge or the process we are doing. Like people tend to rely on the information from somebody who claims to know it because this is how we built in order to avoid like mind overload with
Hmm.
constant processing of some facts that we have no mean to check. So
To make it
this is like a
simpler
very
for us.
human thing to do. Yeah.
Yes, laziness
So,
basically is very human. So I know it.
okay. So,